Hi again. We are now in lesson 2, the Enlightenment, which is very much the continuation of lesson 1. In lesson 1 we discussed the scientific revolution, and in the areas that we focused on lesson 1, we focused on the change view of the world, and it took about 200 years to complete this new worldview and the establishment of the scientific method. And now the Enlightenment happened during the next century, after the scientific revolution had been completed. And in many ways, the Enlightenment is the continuation of the scientific thought. In fact, the definition of enlightenment is the application of the scientific method to other aspects of life. The scientific revolution was applied only to the physical world, and now the Enlightenment is trying to apply the scientific method to all other fields. The philosopher Kant is the one who described or tried to define what the Enlightenment was. And what you see here is what Kant defined: man's living his self-caused immaturity. In other words, Kant believed that humans were not used to thinking by themselves, and now in the Enlightenment they are invited to use their own mind, dare to know, have the courage to use your own intelligence. This is a very famous painting by Fragonard, and it is in many ways a symbol of the Enlightenment, because you can see how, first of all, this person is writing. The Enlightenment is characterized by writing, and this person is, if you look at him, is being inspired. He is writing what he is thinking of. And this is very much the idea of the Enlightenment. Use your own intelligence, your own mind. In the Enlightenment, the first thing that we define is, what is it? Well, it is an intellectual movement. It has aspects of social, economic, and political parts, but it is mainly an intellectual movement. And it is a continuation of the scientific revolution, as we said before. Also, we need to locate where this movement happened and when. It started in Paris in the 18th century, and from Paris it spread to other places. Specifically, it started in gatherings in which intellectuals of different fields got together and started discussing the issues that they were interested in. The Enlightenment as a movement had to do with science becoming popular. But with the advancement of the knowledge of science came religious skepticism, meaning people started doubting when they found that there were religious tenets or religious beliefs that didn't match science. Then they started doubting religion. After the Reformation movement in the 16th century, when the Reformation was complete, there was about maybe a period of about 50 years when all the different religious groups were fighting with one another, killing each other. There was so much blood in Europe caused by religious differences that people in general began to think, what kind of religion is this one that causes so much hatred and so much blood. So this was another reason why people started doubting the validity of religious beliefs. Together with that came the idea that everything had to be analyzed rationally. Just like you would analyze rationally any text written, people started to analyze the Bible in a rational way. And this is what is called textual analysis. And of course, by doing that, they promoted more religious skepticism. There was something else that happened around this time. People were traveling more. When they came back, they were writing their memoirs, and so a great deal of what is called travel literature appeared. And in these travel narratives, the general public began to read about different cultures, different societies, some societies that were considered more primitive than European society, but in many cases they realized that the people who lived in those societies lived maybe happy, even happier than the Europeans, and they didn't have all the technological advances of the Europeans. And the admiration of what they call the noble savage or the natural man made them believe that their culture was not the best, or at least that there were other cultures, other societies with different values, with different perspectives, and that maybe those values and those perspectives were as good or even better as their own. And so that cultural relativism made them realize, well, these societies have also different religious views. Their religious views may be as good as ours, so a great deal of religious skepticism was originated from the cultural relativism, which originated from the travel literature. In this lesson, in this introduction to the lesson, I'm going to concentrate on deism. Some people call it deism, but the word is deism, and dei means God, so you could define it as the religion of a God. But it is a religion that is very much based on the scientific revolution, on the idea that Newton presented, that the universe is a great machine that follows the same laws, and the entire universe is ruled by those laws. The philosopher proposed that there was a God. The image that they proposed of that creator God was a watchmaker or a clockmaker. What that means? A God who was powerful, who created the entire universe, gave the universe laws. The laws worked perfectly well. God saw that his work was perfect and then let it go. So it is a distant God, a God that, just like a clockmaker in the 18th century, who would put all the pieces of the clock together, and once the clock began to work, then the clockmaker didn't bother with the clock anymore. Then, what else is that religion of deism? Well, it has to be following the new intellectual approach of the Enlightenment. It has to be rational. That means any belief needs to be tested by reason. So religious beliefs should pass the test of reason. Any belief that is not logical cannot be accepted. But religion needs to have ethical principles, and those ethical principles can be taken from the message of Jesus. The philosophers did believe that Jesus existed. They didn't doubt the historicity of Jesus. They believed that Jesus was a great teacher and his message was beautiful, and that his ethical principles should and must be applied by people. But Jesus was not God, and Jesus was not the Son of God. Jesus was not divine, and his message is wonderful. Since we live here, it is important that we talk about how this religion of deism affected the United States. Deism became also a popular philosophy and religion of the founding fathers of the United States. There is one example that I wanted to give you. This person said that the teachings of Jesus constitute the outlines of a system of the most sublime morality which has even fallen from the lips of a man. And the person who said that is Thomas Jefferson. And let me show you some examples of what he said. This is something also interesting, because nowadays in our political atmosphere, the general population thinks it is very important to know what the religion of the politicians is, and they wonder what this politician is going to do based on the religion. And you may remember that when President Obama was a candidate, or even during his presidency, several times his religion was questioned, and several times they said, "Do you think he's a Muslim?" And he insisted that he was not a Muslim. Well, Thomas Jefferson didn't allow that. When Thomas Jefferson was accused of being an atheist, he said, "You don't have any business finding out about my religion. My religion is between me and God." And this is the quote of what he said, one of the quotes. "Say nothing of my religion. It is known to God and myself alone. Its evidence before the world is to be sought in my life. If it has been honest and dutiful to society, the religion which has regulated it cannot be a bad one." In other words, just leave me alone. You don't have to know what religious affiliation I have. But we know from his writings that he was not a very orthodox Christian. And this is something that is another quote from him. "And the day will come when the mystical generation, meaning the birth of Jesus by the Supreme Being as his Father in the womb of a virgin, will be classed with the fable of the generation of Minerva." Minerva is the Roman goddess Venus, who was born out of the brain of Zeus. So in Roman terms, Minerva was born out of the brain of Jupiter. And so this is what Jefferson is saying, that Jesus being born of a virgin is as mythical as the birth of Venus. So that gives us an idea of what kind of religious views the founding fathers had. This is interesting because many people claim that the United States as a country was founded on Christianity. And in reality, when we analyze this, we can tell that certainly the founding fathers were not that interested in specifically the Christian religion. After analyzing the Enlightenment religion, I am going to ask you to look at every one of the main philosophers of the Enlightenment. There are several names, and I would like for you to look at each of them, his or her ideas, his or her writings, and the main principles that they proposed. They are, Voltaire is the philosopher. For most scholars, Voltaire is the symbol of the Enlightenment. But others think that Rousseau is more influential for future generations than Voltaire. This is a quote that many people attribute to Voltaire. I read that Voltaire never said it, but if he didn't, this is very much according to his views. I disagree with what you say, but will defend to the death your right to say it. Tolerance of others, tolerance of religion, especially religious tolerance. I would like you to analyze the writings of Diderot. There is one article by him in your textbook that shows the type of writings of the Enlightenment and also the type of mentality that Diderot had, and his famous encyclopedia. Analyze the significance of the encyclopedia. Read about Montesquieu, who proposed the separation of powers, which we consider so important in our political government. And then read about Mary Wollstonecraft. She is one of the most important women in the Enlightenment. So analyze carefully her arguments. We know that he's defending women, but analyze what her arguments are, what her principles are, and what she thinks of women in general and of the rights of women in particular. One person I would like to emphasize is Rousseau. And the reason is Rousseau has contributions at many levels. Politically, in his social contract, he tries to reconcile freedom, which is what he considers the most important part of life, freedom, with society as a whole. How can you be at the same time free and respect laws so society can function? And he calls that the general will. So I'm going to ask you to analyze carefully the role of the general will for Rousseau. Then Rousseau also wrote about education. So what is the goal of education? How should we educate our children to be free and at the same time to be civilized? Also, Rousseau is very important because even though we think of Rousseau as a philosopher, Rousseau did not like to think of himself as a philosopher. And so he opposed many of the ideas of the Enlightenment. And because of that, he is considered a father of Romanticism. First of all, we are going to define Romanticism, and we will do that in the next lesson, but also analyze why Rousseau is thought of as being the father of Romanticism, while at the same time we think of him as a philosopher. This is the key word to identify Rousseau: liberty. Liberty. He is the one who preached, proposed, and talked about liberty all the time. This is one of his famous quotes: "Man is born free, and everywhere he's in chains." So he's totally against all the rules, all the constraints that society puts on people. And he wants to liberate people from those chains. This is another one of his quotes: "To renounce liberty is to renounce being a man, to surrender the rights of humanity and even its duties." Liberty. Although we are going to talk about the ideology of liberty next lesson, I want to give you a hint of what we are going to be talking about, because all these ideas that the philosophers proposed, specifically Voltaire with his religious tolerance, Montesquieu with his political proposal of separation of powers, and especially Rousseau with his focus on freedom and liberty, if you put all those ideas together, we have an ideology that is called liberalism. All the freedoms that we are so proud of, freedom of expression, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all of those come from the Enlightenment, specifically from Rousseau. And all of those put together form what is called the ideology of liberalism. And that includes the economic aspect of it, which means freedom to start a business, freedom from government regulations for your business, freedom to set the prices, freedom to set salaries, all those freedoms that we think of as very much ours originated from the Enlightenment. And all of those freedoms together, all of those ideas together, are the ideology of liberalism. Remember that for next lesson. Now, there are some quotes here that I want to mention because they represent that liberalism that I was telling you about. For instance, the legitimate powers of government extend to such acts only as are injurious to others. But it does me no injury for my neighbor to say there are 20 gods or no God. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. Reason and free inquiry are the only effectual agents against error. Another one: no man has a natural right to commit aggression on the equal rights of another, and this is all, notice the all, from which the laws ought to restrain him. So this is the ultimate liberalism. As long as I don't hurt somebody else, the government has no right to tell me what I should or shouldn't do, in private or in public, as long as I am not hurting anybody. And the summary of it, which is something that politicians today use a lot, most bad government has grown out of too much government. In other words, government should not interfere in what I do, what I think, how I behave, as long as I'm respecting the equal rights of others. This is the ultimate liberalism. And all this came from the Enlightenment, and the person, the philosopher, who said all these three things is Thomas Jefferson. So you can see how Thomas Jefferson is a philosopher and follows exactly the principles of the Enlightenment. And with this, we complete the introduction to lesson 2, the Enlightenment. So, what are the results of the Enlightenment? Well, the Enlightenment brought all changes in the mentality of Europe. It says here of all of Europe, but as we have seen, it's not only in Europe, but in all the Western world. So at the same time that all these ideas are affecting the United States, they are also affecting Latin America and other places in Eastern Europe. So the ideas of the Enlightenment are being spread to the world in many ways. But one immediate result of the Enlightenment is the American Revolution. The War of Independence of the United States was strongly influenced by the Enlightenment. And about the same time came another very important revolution, the French Revolution. And with this, we complete the introduction to lesson 2, and I will see you again when we start lesson 3.